Good morning, everyone. My name is Randy Venny, and I'm one of the tech integrators and also one of the facilitators for this morning's session, along with Julia Evji. We're going to cover the Google Calendar and try to relate it as best we can to your summer school assignments. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, we are recording this session, and we are doing that so that we can provide you with the video to go back and watch and pause and rewind and review the content at your own pace. Next, we ask that you mute your microphone. To do that, move your mouse towards the bottom center of the screen. You'll see a series of 3 buttons. The button on the left should be red, indicating your microphone is off. We ask that you keep your microphone off during the entire session today, as the number of participants makes it difficult to have verbal interactions. That being said, if you do have a question once we get going, we ask that you type it into the chat. You'll find the chat in the upper right-hand part of the screen. It's a white button with a gray text box. You can just click on there and type in your question and hit enter, and either Julia or myself will respond when the time allows. Speaking of the chat button, if you have not already done so, please click on that right now and type in your first and last name and hit enter. That is how Julia and I will record attendance for today's session in my learning plan. Make sure you get credit for this morning's professional learning. All right, now to the meat and potatoes of today's session. So today we're going to show you 2 options for using a Google Calendar during summer school. The first option is to create a calendar with your Google Calendar. The second option is to use the calendar that is automatically created as part of Google Classroom. It is up to you whether you wish to use the calendar from your Google Classroom, since it will automatically be created. We will also mention how Google Meet links work differently in Google Calendar and in Google Classroom. So we're going to start with Google Calendar. Julia is going to demonstrate the how-to steps as a teacher, while I will show you the student side and the options available to them. So I will stop presenting my animated GIF and turn it over to Julia to get underway.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. And what you should see right now is my ClassLink Launchpad. Can you verify that, Randy?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we're going to just remind you that we always encourage students and staff to enter your Google Calendar through your ClassLink Launchpad. So I'm going to click on Google Apps and open up my Google Calendar. I'm going to be talking a lot about the settings and the options today in Google Calendar. To access these settings and options, you need to click on these 3 horizontal lines so that you see this main menu over here on the left-hand side of your calendar. If you don't see that, just click on the 3 lines and it will expand and open up. I just want to point out to you that by default, you're going to have 3 calendars. Your default calendar has your name on it, and that's the one that is created as part of your RUSD account. Then you're going to have a calendar called Reminders and a calendar called Tasks. We're going to start today by showing you how to create a new Google Calendar. This is actually a sub-calendar part of your default calendar. So to create a new Google Calendar, perhaps you want to name this Google Calendar Summer School, you would need to click over here next to the word Other Calendars, and there's a plus button. So you would click on the plus button and choose Create New Calendar. So I'm going to give that a name. Again, you can name it whatever you want. For my example today, this is just going to simply be a summer school calendar. You can give a description here, that's optional, but all you really need to do is hit this blue Create Calendar button. You'll notice it says Creation in Progress, and then down here it says it's been successfully created. So now we want to go and see that calendar. We're going to click on this back arrow, which brings us back to this main calendar. And now over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see the summer school calendar has been added to the list of your calendars. Notice that these calendars appear in alphabetical order, and by default, this calendar has been given this light purple color. If I wanted to change that color, so it's a specific color for my students and myself, I need to click on these 3 vertical dots, and then here I have some custom colors that I can choose. Now that we have our summer school calendar created, we need to go ahead and share this calendar. So to share this calendar, you're going to hover over the name. Again, click on the 3 vertical dots and go to Settings and Sharing. This opens up the calendar settings for this specific calendar named Summer School. Over here on the left-hand side, you want to select Access Permissions. Now you'll see the setting for access permissions is here on the right-hand side of my screen. By default, this is going to say make available for Racine Unified School District, and we want to keep that. If you plan on sharing this calendar with your students for summer school, keep this checked. What you do want to change is the drop down directly to the right. If you plan on putting assignments and due dates that you want your students to see the details of, you need to click on this drop down and change it to See All Event Details. That's really an important step. So we're going to change that to See All Event Details. You'll notice down here it says the setting has been changed. And now we want to get a link so that we can share this calendar with our students. All you need to do is click here where it says Get Shareable Link. Here is a specific link that you can share with your students. I'm going to click on Copy Link. And now I'm actually going to email the students in my class. So I'm going to open up my Gmail, and Randy is actually going to be my student today, so I want to share this with Randy. So I'll compose an email real quick and type in his name. This is our summer school calendar. And then all I have to do is paste in that link. I'm going to hit send, and my student Randy is going to receive this email. We're going to switch over and show the student side in just 1 second so you can see what steps your students need to take in order to accept that calendar share that you just initiated. One thing that I want to show you here, underneath access permissions, there's an option to share with specific people. Now here you could click on this plus add people button, and you could manually type in the names of people who you would like to share your calendar with. I don't think this is an efficient way if you're sharing your calendar with, let's say, 40 some students in your summer school class. I would suggest this option to share with specific people. If you wanted to add a co-teacher, an administrator, here you could just type in one of those people's names and send an invite to see that calendar. So again, there's really 2 options. I suggest using the Get Shareable Link option to mass send an email out to your students. If you're just sharing this calendar with a handful of people, you might want to click Add People here and manually type in their names. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and my student Randy is going to show you how this looks to accept the calendar.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Miss FG. So you should be able to see my email right now, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. And you can see one of my unread emails here is from Julia sharing the summer school calendar. So I open that email, and it's just a link with a whole bunch of random letters and numbers that really doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But when I click on it, I go into my calendar app, and it's a very simple message, just says add calendar. It's called summer school. My options are either to add it to my list or cancel it. In this case, I'm going to add. And then you can see it added itself to the list over here on the left. Notice this isn't alphabetical. Well, actually, it is alphabetical, but the calendars that I've chosen to show are what get moved to the top, and I can do that by checking or unchecking this box. So now anything that will be related to this summer school will be this purple color. It randomly picks a color, so you don't tell your students it's going to be purple. It'll be whatever color their calendar app chooses for them. All right, so I'm going to throw it back over to you now, Julia.
Yep.
While we're switching back over, I'm just going to say that you need to tell your students to get in the habit of checking their Google Calendar. They won't receive emails for every single thing that Julia places on that summer school calendar. So you need to remind them to check.
Okay, so now I'm going to go through a couple options of creating things on your Google Calendar. Again, these are just examples. I just wanted to give you some ideas on how you might use this summer school calendar with your students. So, to create an event or to create appointment slots in your calendar, you're always going to click on this plus create button. You could also click directly on your calendar in a specific date and time range. But for today's example, I'm just going to click on this create button. I like to get in the habit of going to more options. This just lets me see all the options available and it's full screen, so I know I'm not missing anything. So here I'm actually going to create an event, and you'll notice that by default it makes an event. And I'm going to have a small group meeting. This might be an option for you as we are using a virtual blended summer school this year. So here's my small group meeting. I want to pick the date and time for this meeting to occur. So let's have this on Thursday, and I can click on the drop down for my time. I'm going to have a 1 hour session for my small group meeting. Now, one thing that you'll probably want to do when you need to meet virtually with your students is to give them a Google Meet link. And you're going to do that right here in the calendar event. All you need to do is click on this blue button where it says Add Google Meet. Once you click on that button, it's automatically going to give you a unique link so that the students can join. The most important thing when you're working with this separate summer school calendar that you created is you actually create the event as part of that summer school calendar. So by default, it's always going to be on my default calendar with my name. I need to click here on my name and change it to summer school. Remember my summer school calendar I made green? So this is just a good visual reminding me that yes, this is going to be an event created on my summer school calendar. Now, I could go ahead and hit save, and this would be just viewable to all of my students on my summer school calendar. But that means any student could go ahead and click on this Google Meet link. It's important to note that when you generate Google Meet links through Google Calendar, it allows students to click on the link at any time. That means you, as the Meet organizer, don't need to be present. Your students could use this Meet link to communicate with each other without adult supervision. So that's just something that I need to make you aware of. As soon as you click save, this Google Meet link is live and your students can click on it at any time. Something that you might want to consider is waiting to click on that blue button to add the Meet link until a few minutes before your small group meeting. If you're really worried about students accessing that link before you get there, you might want to add that link just a few minutes before your event. Now, like Randy mentioned before, you want to get your students in the habit of looking at this calendar. Your students are not going to be notified that, hey, you have a small group meeting. If you do want your students to be notified, you could add them as a guest. So over here on the right-hand side, you can click here in the gray box where it says add guest. And here I could type in Randy's name and some other students' names to be part of my small group. When you add them as guests and you click on this save button, it's actually going to ask you, would you like to send invitation emails to Google Calendar guests? Yes, I do, so I want to hit send. And that means that Randy, as my student, because he's a guest, is going to receive an automated email from Google Calendar reminding him that he's part of that small group meeting so he can join via Google Meet. You'll notice that this event was created on my calendar. Here it is in a green color because remember, my summer school calendar is green. The rest of the events are purple, part of my default calendar. So we're going to go ahead and create another event. So I'll click on this create button. And I like to go to more options. And let's go ahead and add something here that needs a due date, something that you want your students to have a hard due date with a date and time for. Perhaps they need to turn something in. So my example is going to be a unit review. That will be the title of my event. And here I want to pick, again, the date and time that this is due. So I'll go ahead and pick the date. Now you have a couple options of adding a specific time that you want this to be turned in. Let's say that it doesn't really matter if it's time specific. Just sometime on June 19th, this unit review is due. In that case, you might want to click here where it says all day. When you click on that all day option, you'll notice that the time option disappears. Again, this is just due on a specific date. I can uncheck that box and I'll see my time options return. Let's say that you need this unit review turned in by noon. That's your expectation. I would go ahead and change here, clicking on the start time and making it noon. But instead of having it a 30-minute range, I can actually click on the end time and make that noon as well. Obviously, it's going to be a 0-minute long in length event, but this way your students will see that I need to turn in this unit review assignment specifically at noon. Just something to consider. Remember, you always want to make sure this is part of your specific calendar. So I'm going to click on my default calendar name and change that to summer school. Let's talk about this description option down here. This is a great place to add information for your students. So here I could type in some information freehand, but I could also add some attachments. So let's say you had a unit review document. You could click here on this paperclip icon, and you can find a file in various places. So somewhere from your recent section of files, your drive, a shared drive, a file that has been shared with you, or you could upload a file from your device. So for my example today, I'm just going to choose some file and click on select. And you'll notice that I have successfully added that file because this little icon appears. I know it's a Google Doc with that blue symbol. And then if I hover over, it actually says the title of the document. Now your students would be able to click on this document and open it up as part of the event. Again, if you're just having your students get in the habit of going to this summer school calendar, you're fine and you could hit save. If you wanted to type here in the guest section, you could type in a name or a list of names of your students so that they would receive an email notification for this unit review. So in my case, I'm just going to click save. And again, you'll notice that this unit review has been created in green on my calendar. If I click on that event, as a teacher or as a student, I could click on that file and that would open up a Google Doc and allow me to view that file. So my last example for you today here on the calendar is to use the appointment slot feature. These two examples here were an event. Now Randy and I are going to show you what an appointment slot looks like. To create an appointment slot, you're going to click on that plus create button. Again, by default, you're always going to have an event, but this time I want to go across the top and choose appointment slots. Now, I still like to click over here for more options, but you'll notice the options are a lot different when you're creating an appointment slot. So an appointment slot is something that I might use for office hours. I want to show my students that I'm available at a specific time, but I want individual students to be able to sign up for a time to meet with me, not all students available. So my event title, or I'm sorry, my appointment slot title is going to be office hours. And I need to pick a date for my office hours, so let's make them on Friday. Now, this is the range for your office hours. So I'm going to start office hours at 9 a.m. and my office hours will end at 12 p.m. So 3 hours in length. And then here's the important part. This is what makes this different with appointment slots. You're actually going to decide how long you want that slot or that specific meeting time to last. So let's say I want to give my students the opportunity to sign up with me in 30-minute selections. I could change this number here by clicking and dragging, typing on top a different number, or using these arrows to change the times. So within the 9 a.m. to noon period, it's actually going to create those 30-minute slots for me. Again, I could add descriptions. I don't need to add guests, but what I do want is this to show up on my summer school calendar. So here it's not letting me change that, so I need to go back. When I click on appointment slots here, I need to make sure I choose summer school. So let's do that real quick. We're going to do from 9 to noon. It's on my summer school calendar. It's going to be 30 minutes long, and these are my office hours. So now I'm going to click on save. And you'll notice that this office hours appointment slot has been created. Again, it's green, but what I want to point out to you is this symbol right here. These 4 squares alert you and remind you that this is a specific type of calendar event called an appointment slot. Now, it just looks like one chunk of time from that 9 a.m. to noon time, but Randy's going to show you how that is broken up when your students begin to sign up for these appointment slots.
So in order for me to sign up for an appointment slot, first, as the teacher, you need to indicate when these slots exist. I don't know unless I frequently go and look at the calendar. So it would be a good idea as the teacher to say, okay, I'm going to have office hours from 9 to noon. Please go sign up. And so here we are on my calendar. And in this case, purple for me is the summer school calendar. And so I see the office hours block here, but then when I click on them, it gives me a link right here to say, go to the appointment page for this calendar. So I can click on that and it's going to open up kind of a unique look here. You can see the calendar listed here. And then these 6 appointment slots, because that's how many slots fit into that window that she created. And so I just have to click on one, confirm what it says. It automatically puts my name in there under office hours. Anything else I want to type here is optional, entirely optional. I just hit save. What it's done now, you'll notice, is that appointment slot is gone. It's no longer visible because it has been selected by me. That includes other students would not see that. When I go to my calendar, you can see, or I'm sorry, the summer school calendar, it pops up with office hours and then it throws my name in that appointment slot. And when I go to my Gmail account, I have an automatic invitation, is what they say, even though I picked the slot. I click on there and you can see yes has already been selected for me as accepting that invitation. So that way I'm able to just have that email sitting there as a reminder that I've selected this appointment. So there's 3 places where it's visible to me now: in my email, on my calendar, which is the green color here, and then on the summer school calendar, which is, in this case, the purple color. Throw it back over to Julia as the teacher here.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you how that looks very similar on the teacher side. We know that Randy signed up for those office hours. So over here, I see that Randy's name is a specific event on that summer school calendar. But then behind that event, I still see that main section, that 9 a.m. to noon, which are my original office hours. So I can click here on Randy's name, see, yes, he's coming from 10 to 10:30. As a teacher, I could also click on that 9 a.m. to noon option. I also have that blue link that brings me to the appointment page or the appointment slot view for my calendar. Again, as a teacher, I can see that this option is no longer available because someone signed up for that. So that might be something that you want to explain to your students, that importance of clicking on that blue link so that they are able to actually sign up for that appointment slot. So I'm going to pause right now and ask Randy if there are any questions in the chat that we need to go over.
No, not at this time, but if you do have any questions in regards to things we've just shown on Google Calendar, please type them in there now. Otherwise, if we don't have any, we'll switch over to the Google Classroom aspects of Calendar. Oh, there we go. Question just came in from Elizabeth. Can you add a Google Meet to the appointment? Yes, yes, you can. Do you want to just show that real quick, Julia?
Sure. So when I created the event, this is how you add that Google Meet option by clicking on the blue link. Again, that's automatically going to make a specific link that's unique to that Google Meet. And then you want to make sure that it's on the summer school calendar. Did that answer the question?
I believe so. Any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Otherwise, in about 30 seconds or so, we'll just switch over to the Google Classroom portion of today's Google Calendar session. All right, Julia, I think we're safe to shift gears here.
Okay.
Oh, wait, a question just
Oops.
came in.
Go for it.
Amanda's asking, can a Google Meet be added to the office appointment hours? Ooh, that's,
Let's see. Make these appointment slots.
it doesn't look like it. I'm wondering if you can add it to that individual one. Can you click on the one that I've selected?
Mm-hmm. Oops. See if I can edit. Oh, here we go.
Yep. So that has to be done individually, it looks like, Amanda. So after they've selected the appointment slot, then you can add the conferencing. Great, you taught us something today too. Good question.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you. One thing, Randy, I didn't go over as regards to Google Meet, I think I made it clear that whenever you create an event, it makes that Google Meet link specific to that one event. But if you're creating a repeating event, I just want to show how that will look different with that Google Meet aspect. So let me do that real quick. So just let's say this is a check-in and I want my students to join with Google Meet. I'm going to go ahead and click more options. Here I can have this repeat. So let's say I'm going to have a weekly check-in with my students. So I'll click here where it says does not repeat. And you have a lot of options here. So maybe you want this to happen weekly on Thursdays, let's say. So every Thursday from 12:30 to 1, I'm going to have that check-in with that Google Meet link. Now, what you'll notice is when I hit save, here's my first check-in that was created on the 18th. If I move to the next week, I have another check-in that was created. But when I click on this event, the Google Meet link is actually going to be the same each week. So that's something important to note. Every time you click on that Google Meet link, because we made it repeating, it's exactly the same. That code at the end is the same.
But that's only if it's a repeating appointment. If you create individual appointments, the links will be different each time.
Yep, that's something that I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, so like Randy said, we're going to move over to Google Classroom right now. That might be a tool that you're going to use for summer school. But we wanted to show you that with Google Classroom, the moment that you create a class, a calendar is created for you and your students. So it's going to save you a little bit of time rather than having to create that sub calendar. Again, that's going to be created automatically. Another advantage of using the Classroom calendar is that every time you create an assignment in Google Classroom with a due date, that assignment will automatically show up on the calendar. And your students are going to receive an email notification for that. So you might want to consider this option as far as how much work you want to put into actually keeping that calendar updated, as well as how you want your students to be notified. So you'll notice right here, I actually have two classrooms. I have a social studies class and a math class. And Randy is a student in both of these for me. So today I'm going to work on this social studies class. And here on the classwork tab, you'll notice the option for Google Calendar. So if you or your student are on the classwork tab and you click here on Google Calendar, it's actually going to open up the calendar app. Now on the left-hand side underneath my calendars, you'll notice this calendar called Social Studies is automatically shown on my calendar. It gave it a default color, and any assignment with a due date is actually going to appear here on this calendar. So let's go ahead and create an assignment right now. So I'm going to go back to my social studies Google Classroom. I'll quickly assignment, we'll just call it a test. And the important part of this is over here on the right-hand side. You want to choose a due date. So you'll click down here and you'll have a calendar. Let's make this due on Friday. The time is optional. Remember, if you don't add a time, it's just going to consider it an all-day event. So your students would just have to have their test done sometime on June 19th. But if you wanted them to have it done, exactly at 11 a.m., you could type in that time. So all I did was I gave this a title, I gave it a due date, and now I'm going to click on the Assign button. Now I'm going to click on my Google Calendar link. Again, this is going to open up that calendar app for me. And you'll notice over here in this orange yellow color, I have that assignment automatically added. If I click on that, it's going to give me some information. This is part of the social studies calendar. If myself or my student would click on that link, it would actually bring them back to the Google Classroom assignment. So that's a really nice feature. It's going to automatically add that, as well as give them a link to go back to that specific assignment. So from your classwork tab, that's where you would click on the Google Calendar. There's also another calendar option within your Google Classroom. Calendar on the 3 horizontal lines, and you're going to select calendar from this left-hand side list. Now, this calendar shows assignments with events, but it does not allow me to add more assignments. You can see there's no plus create button here. This is really just an overview. So you can notice that my assignment for social studies is here on Friday, but I'm also able to view my math Google Classroom assignments as well. And those are over here in this purple color. On the left-hand side where it says all classes, if I click on that drop down, I can manually choose which classes I want to be viewed. So if I want just that social studies class to be viewed, I'll only see that one social studies assignment. If I click on the drop down again and choose math, I can only see those math assignments. So again, this calendar is a little bit different. It's more of just an overview. The calendar app, when I clicked on that from my classwork tab, that's actually going to bring me to that original calendar. So I'm going to let Randy show you how that looks from a student side. Again, this is something that you might want to encourage your students to use.
All right, so let's switch over to my Google Classroom here, and you can see here I'm listed in the social studies and math classes. They're part of my classes here. One thing I can do is I can click on these 3 horizontal lines when I'm in Google Classroom, and you'll see one of my options here is to list the classes, the other is to list calendar. Remember, I'm doing this from the student's point of view, and this looks almost exactly the same as what Julia was showing. I have my pinkish color here for the math, and then this kind of burnt orange color for social studies. And likewise, I can pick a specific class, or I can have them show all of them. I'm allowed to navigate between sessions here, but what's interesting is when I click on those assignments, then it takes me directly to the assignment in Google Classroom. So it's another way to get to that assignment versus going into the classroom, clicking on the classwork tab. I can do it right here from the calendar. So when students enter Google Classroom, they default to this page, and then they just have to click on the 3 lines and go to the calendar. That is what I was demonstrating there before. But they also show up here on my calendar app itself. So when I'm in my Google Calendar, again, over here on the left side, you'll see under other calendars, I have math and social studies, and Google Calendar just defaults them to a color. If I wanted to differentiate them like they are in Google Classroom, the students can just click on the 3 dots and then pick another color, and you can see they've changed. And because Julia did not assign a specific time on the due date, that's why they appear way up here above everything else, directly below the dates. is because there is no specific time. If she had indicated a time, it would have actually put that assignment at the time it was due on that specific day. Julia, throw it back over to you.
Okay. So I know this is a lot of back and forth, but we're really just trying to show you all the options that you have, and so that you can really think through which you want to use with your students. Remember, we said with Google Classroom, those assignments are going to be automatically added for you, but that's not to say you can't come here in the calendar app and add something part of that Google Classroom calendar. So let's take that social studies calendar, for example. I can go ahead here and click on a specific time for my event. And now on my drop down underneath default calendar, I could choose that social studies calendar, which is technically part of my Google Classroom. So here I could also have, appointment slots. Here I could give an example like that check-in, and I could save it so that my students would see it as part of their social studies calendar, which is technically part of that Google Classroom calendar. So a couple different options for you. We mentioned Google Meet earlier, how you can add that meeting link right here within Google Calendar. I do want to take a little bit of time and talk about Google Meet from your actual Google Classroom. And the reason that we want to talk about that is because your Google Meet link is going to act very differently when you create the link through your Google Classroom. So here is my social studies Google Classroom. And the first thing that I'm going to do is point out the two places where you and your students would actually see this Google Meet link. The first place is here on the stream. This image right here is called your banner, and you'll notice it has the Meet link. Again, this is an actual clickable link for you and your students. The other place that you would see this Google Meet link is in the Classwork tab, where we touched on the Google Calendar before. To the left of that, you see this Meet button. And if I would click on this as a student or as a teacher, it would bring me to the Google Meet app. Now, the reason that these Meet links are different is because when Google Meet links are generated through Google Classroom, they don't allow students to join unless the organizer is present first. Students will receive an error message if they try to join this way before the organizer is present. Technically, this Meet link is open to the whole class. So that means if you are trying to use this Meet link through your Google Classroom for a small group meeting, and Randy was not part of my small group meeting, and Randy just happened to come in at the time that I'm meeting with my students, if he clicks on that Meet link, either here on the Classwork tab or here on the stream, he would be able to join. And that's because I was present first. If that happened, I would just say to Randy as my student, hey, this is not your small group meeting time. I'm going to need you to leave. And then he could just remove himself from the meet. So again, it's not perfect. You can't specifically invite a small group of students to join with this link, but it does give you that safeguard, only allowing students to join unless the teacher has joined first.
Amanda just asked a great question related to this. If you set up the Google Meet through Google Classroom like this, as Julia just said, they can't come in until you're there. However, the kids can stick in the classroom after you leave, so that's something you need to be aware of. They can continue to talk to each other even if the teacher is not present. It's kind of like the teacher opened the door for them, and then the teacher left, but left the kids inside the classroom. That's it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So it's always best practice to be the first one as the teacher to be present in the Meet, whether you're in Google Classroom or you're just using that Meet through the calendar link. And then I always like to say to my students, okay, thanks for joining me today. Please remove yourself from the session. I stick around for a few more minutes. If for some reason they're lingering, they haven't left, you can actually use the remove function in Google Meet. Make sure you are the last one to leave, and then you close the Meet.
Madeline's just asked a question, and I don't know if we know the answer to this off the top of our head. Can the co-teachers be the first ones in? You know, there's one teacher who is designated as the owner, but then the other co-teachers listed on the people tab.
I
I don't know
haven't tried that out yet.
I haven't either. We have time if we want to try that right now. Are you still part of it? No, you're not part of that one. I was looking for a class that we're both teachers on.
Yeah, we might have to get back to you on that one, but that's a good point.
Yeah, we'll have to check that one out, Madeline, and find out for you since I'm only a student on Julia's classroom. So we'll send that out maybe as the follow-up email to this class with the link to the video.
Okay, any other questions about using a calendar either within the calendar app or within Google Classroom?
Mark is asking, is there a way to remove a single student or mute all of the students?
Yes, you can mute a student and you can remove a student, but be aware that the student can still rejoin the meet. When you remove them, it's not permanent. That might be like a power struggle back and forth. You can mute them, but they can unmute themselves. You can remove them, but they can rejoin. So it's not a perfect tool, but yes, you can mute and remove students. Do I need to show where those buttons are?
Well, probably wouldn't hurt.
So here is the Google Meet. You guys can see everyone participating. Um, so over here next to each person's name, you can click on this drop down option and you have the option to mute them. It's the little microphone with the line through it. And then this circle with the line is to remove them. Now, it's important to note, I did not create today's Google Meet, Randy did. So Randy is the organizer of the meet. He's the one who has the option to remove someone. I cannot do that.
And I think that might, I don't know if that's going to answer Madeline's question, but only one person in the meeting has power to do that. So I don't know that the co-teacher necessarily thing will work, but Julia and I will definitely try that out later on and let you know about the co-teacher aspect. Anybody else have a question? Feel free to enter it into the chat. I realize we're short of our 60 minutes here, but we kind of covered all the things that I think are going to be related to your summer school Google Calendar needs. So feel free to enter a question in the chat if you want. Otherwise, if you want to go try to set things up for your classroom, because I know summer school is just around the corner, you can exit this session by closing the tab in your browser, and then go about and set up your calendars.